Just imagine for a moment you've set a Guinness World Book of Record for traveling around the globe, circumnavigating the planet in a Volvo assembled in Halifax. And then you say, well, what's next? Well, we got to pay for that trip, so let's go from the bottom of Africa to the top of Europe. And then you say, now what? This says before anyone, and this is a record going from the bottom of South America all the way to the tip of Alaska. And Garry Sowerby did that. We were both former redheads. He's got some great stories to tell, and we're very happy here on Maritime Machines to share this story, this GMC truck, which in itself was very special, and we'll tell you why coming up. Tell me a little bit about when this truck came into your life.
This truck's a 1988 model, but we got it in 1987.
How did that happen?
Well, they all come out in the fall, right?
True.
This one came out a little early because this truck was a completely redesigned pickup truck.
Okay.
GM was bent on changing the way they build pickup trucks.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the key components of this, other than a completely different design than the older GM trucks,
mm-hmm.
this one's got independent front suspension.
Okay.
That's how they could take four-wheel drive trucks and bring them down and lower them by putting independent front suspension.
Right.
GM, like any company, would worry about the first one. They were the first to do it.
First gen, first edition, this platform.
With that front end.
With that front end. You approached them in a way because of what you had done previous to that. You made it to the front of the Guinness World Book of Records for driving a Halifax-assembled Volvo around the globe. What in the world possessed you to do that trip, first of all?
I don't know. It was an all-nighter with Ken Langley, a buddy of mine from Cape Breton, a guy I went to Mount A with.
Yeah.
And it was an all-nighter, 1978, from Ottawa to Halifax. Mm-hmm. And we got talking about road trip. We'd just seen Animal House.
Okay.
John Belushi in Animal House.
Yeah.
And we decided that the ultimate road trip would be to drive around the world. It started out that simple.
That simple.
6 months later, we'd both quit our jobs. We'd set up our little company, Odyssey International. We went out and raised some money from 50 shareholders, and we went out and did that trip.
Right.
They put us on the front cover of the Guinness Book of Records. We took a month off the existing record.
Wow.
But when we came back, everybody loved us but the banks.
Why is that?
Because we owed them $120,000.
And this is in 1980.
This is in 1980. That's a lot of money today.
Yeah, it was a lot of money.
A real lot of money then.
Yeah.
But it wasn't like we were these frivolous two young guys.
Mm-hmm.
The trip had cost $400,000 to do everything.
Really?
To raise the money to put the thing on.
Yeah.
So we were only 120 off of 400. We were kind of in the ballpark.
Yeah, not too bad with the estimate.
So then we said, what are we going to do? Am I going to go back to being an engineer or try to get my flying career back on? Ken going to go be a lawyer?
Mm-hmm.
We didn't want to do that.
Right.
We went to the States. I got a 15-minute meeting with John Rock. He was the head of the whole truck operation. He had an office as big as his backyard.
Yeah.
And I had 15 minutes.
Okay, that's a big elevator pitch for 15 minutes.
How am I going to start this 15 minutes?
Yeah.
I took that Guinness Book of Records with me and the Volvo on the front cover.
Yeah.
And I walked into his office and I said, "Thank you for seeing me, Mr. Rock," and I put that on the desk. He told me years later he was going to throw me out. What's this guy coming in here with a picture of the Volvo on the front, right? So he agreed to sponsor us to break the record from the bottom of Africa to the top of Europe.
Okay. And had that trek ever been done before? Was there a record of that being done before?
There was a record.
Right.
A guy named Richard Pape had done it in 1956.
Wow.
But it took him 6 months. So Norris McWhirter, who was the editor of the Guinness Book of Records at the time, we went to see him, talk about how we're going to get out of this jam.
Yeah.
And he said, if you can do it, you'll probably beat him, because it took him 6 months.
Right.
We did it in 28 days.
Really?
We brought the truck back with 9 bullet holes in it from an ambush in Kenya. We drove right through the Iran-Iraq War. We put it on a smuggling boat across the Red Sea. That looked like war compared to the around the world was like Boy Scout camp.
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
there was one more record for long distance driving in the Guinness Book of Records.
Right.
and that was the Americas.
The Americas. The other one was from Africa.
Africa.
Okay.
Yeah, there were 3 records in the Guinness Book of Records around the world. We
That
had
was the
that
first
one in
one?
1980.
Yep.
Africa Arctic, we got that in 1984.
Different vehicle.
Different vehicle.
Yep.
And then this one to help Mr. Rock introduce his new front end and his new truck
Yeah.
to the American and Canadian public.
Talk about like a rock.
Yeah, like a rock. Yeah.
Yeah. So in order to keep moving without worrying about fuel, how does that happen in something like this?
We got 2 fuel tanks.
Okay.
This is the normal fuel tank, carries about 400 pounds of fuel.
Okay. So about 40
About
gallons.
40 gallons, right?
Yep.
35, 40 gallons.
Yep.
This is another 110 gallons.
Okay.
In the back, there's a fuel tank back there surrounding the bunk
Okay.
that we never slept in.
Right.
And so you could fill this tank about 3.5 times with this one.
So you just drain from one, or
Yeah.
transfer from one to the
That
other?
actually pumps right into the filler.
Okay, so you
neck on
didn't
the
modify
inside.
the fuel system in any way. It's a
We didn't
stock
modify.
truck.
It's a stock truck.
Okay.
But this fuel system, this truck, if we filled it up here in Halifax,
Yeah.
we could drive to Toronto, turn around and get back here, and probably have enough fuel to get to Moncton or Fredericton on a second run.
Even with that big V8 and the size and weight of this vehicle?
Well, one of the things too, this engine was pretty easy on fuel.
Was it?
You know.
Well, it's a manual transmission, 5-speed overdrive?
Oh, 4-speed.
4-speed.
With a deep low.
Okay.
So it's really like a 3-speed.
3-speed, yeah.
In Colombia,
Yeah.
with you guys with guns stopping traffic.
Yeah.
You know, if they're bandits and you stop, you're in trouble.
Right.
If they're police and you don't stop,
You're in trouble. Yeah.
So the idea was to basically get a sales job to do, make them like us, right? That's why we put this on here
Yeah.
in Spanish, right?
So they would know.
But the record was 56 days that we were trying to beat.
Uh-huh.
So we put 25 days or less. We did it in 23. But we had spare 3s, 4s, and 5s.
You just swap it out.
But all of a sudden, we're into day 40. We're in the States
Straight,
driving.
straight,
We're saying, and it looks like we failed. So that's the
Glow plug.
glow plugs, right?
So these aren't stock seats.
No.
And the suspension is stock.
Suspension stock.
Yeah.
But it's a 1-ton, eh? It's 3,500.
Yeah. So you grew up in Moncton.
Grew up in Moncton, went to Harrison Tremble, then Mount A.
And what kind of childhood did you have? Were there lots of cars around? Was that a part of your life?
Oh,
Your
yeah.
dad was
Dad always had a, Dad was a blue-collar guy, he ended up starting a business, storefronts, all the glass and the metal work
Okay,
around,
yeah.
storefronts and stuff.
salesman.
Yeah. And, but he always had, he'd trade cars every couple of years. Now it was always a car now.
Yep.
And the other bit of fuel we had on board here, local angle here, was farmers' milkshakes.
Oh, yes.
They had just come out with the Tetra Pak. This is 1987.
Right.
With the Tetra Pak, jam the straw down.
Yep.
I ended up sitting with the president of Farmers Dairy on a flight from Toronto to here.
Right.
And he'd heard of those other things that we'd done. And anyway, at the end of the flight, we made a deal.
Okay.
If I would take 1,000 milkshakes with me, he'd give me $5,000. I said, look, I'll take 500, ship 500 to Panama. So we took off with this truck and all this technology of the day,
Yeah.
and 500
milkshakes.
milkshakes. And the milkshakes. Well, it was
How many
those
did you drink?
Well, we probably drank 100, but everybody in South America was drinking those milkshakes.
Yeah.
Because every time we got stopped,
Yeah.
we were drinking a milkshake. We had a cooler in the middle. Okay, we're getting stopped. Let's start drinking a
Let me
milkshake.
guess.
Right?
Let me guess. Want one?
You want one?
How much did that help the trip?
That helped a lot.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, growing up, Larry and I had fun with cars.
Yeah.
Our first job, we got lot boys at a Lincoln Mercury dealership, right? Washing all the cars, lining them up. You know, we're only 13, but
Right.
we did
This is your
that.
twin brother, Larry.
Larry, yeah. We got 25 cents a car for washing those cars, which
But-
we had to split.
Okay, but did you get to move them around?
Oh yeah.
Oh, well,
Yeah,
there you
and
go.
then
That's
we got
worth
our
more
license.
than 25 cents.
Oh yeah, then when we got our license, the dealership, they loved us, right? A
Yeah.
couple of identical twin boys. They'd say at the weekend, we go wash all the cars on the lot on Saturday morning, and then they'd say, well, you can take whatever car you want,
No.
as long as it hasn't been reconditioned. So we go on the back lot.
Yeah.
At first, we try to find the car we liked the most.
Of course.
That we could take, but then it became which one's got the most gas in it.
Oh, right. Thinking ahead. So GMC Sierra, the Canadian flag, the Canadian CDN, so people know as you're blowing by where you're from.
Yeah.
And then, as you say, inside is where you carry your excess fuel. Let's take a look inside. I'd love to see what's in here.
So that's the big tank up here.
Okay, yep,
That's the fuel pump that pumps the fuel into the normal fuel system.
yep.
2 spares here, another one underneath, so we had 3 spare tires.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is the storage unit here.
Full of milkshake. Okay, spare parts.
I think there's a milkshake in here.
There it is.
35-year-old milkshake. Anyone want to take a drink? It's in one lump, I can guarantee it.
One bite. I'm good. You can put that back.
Another 35.
Wow. And that was all custom made for this?
That was all custom made.
And who did that work?
That was done by a company called Cars and Concepts in Detroit.
Okay.
And the truck was built in Canada, it was built in Oshawa. In fact, of these series of trucks when they came out, this was the first production 1-ton diesel they built.
Right.
And they told me at the plant they had to stop the line twice to put it together because they'd never done a diesel installation. It was
Okay.
the first diesel and it was the first manual transmission.
So somebody said, whoa, wait, well, let's make sure we get it right. Or
So that's another record. We got stopped the GM production line twice.
twice. Go through a lot of bad weather? I mean, you would have hit every type of weather from...
Well, yeah, because we started down there.
What time of the year was it?
Well, it was fall up here, so we started in the spring down there, so it was the
Yeah.
thaw.
Yeah.
We came out of the winter into spring, then we passed through summer, and then back into fall again, right?
All in one grand adventure.
All in 3 weeks.
Yeah. I guess on the upside, you really weren't changing time zones.
That was, yeah. Tierra del Fuego is on the same time zone as us,
Yeah.
right here. So, you know what it did is it made me feel that I wasn't that far from home for some reason. Because it's not like you're calling from Australia and you got all the,
Whole
you know,
days.
the time zones were
Time.
the same. So that's an interesting observation because most people don't think that if you go
Yeah.
south.
No, it's just the seasons that change, not the time.
Yeah.
Now, I know that Suburban, I saw a video where it was on display, and it still has bullet holes in it.
Oh yeah. We still got the 9-hole.
And really, it was the fact that they weren't used to a left-hand drive vehicle because it was a North American built or left-hand drive.
Yeah.
They thought
They
they were
thought-
getting at the driver.
We thought, and we had, at that point, we left Nairobi at 3 in the morning to get up past Mount Kenya, past the equator, to get up to the Ethiopian border. But we had to stop 200 kilometers short to pick up an escort. But when we picked up the escort, there were 4 soldiers,
Okay.
all with machine guns, and about 500 pounds of rice they wanted us to carry up there. So the truck, an overloaded truck was even more overloaded. And I had to get some sleep. So that Suburban has 2 seats here, a jump seat there, and then a stove unit over here, fridge stove unit, and then 2 bunks in the back, right? So it's enclosed,
Right.
Like a Suburban. So I went on the floor in between to sleep. One of the soldiers was laying on the bunk, one in that seat, one here. I guess there were 3 of them. And we come around the corner, and I heard these metallic clicks. A lot of rattling because it was a rough road, but I heard these things, and I realized after it was these guys taking their guns off safety.
Oh, okay.
They knew about that corner.
They had a feeling.
They had a feeling that we were, and we come around this corner and there was 6 guys right like where he shooting at us. One bullet came right through the back window here and out that window.
Yeah.
And then that night, see, one bullet went through the expansion tank on the radiator.
Okay.
They shot out a back tire, hit a tire on the roof.
Right. So you just kept driving. They shot at you. You just kept driving.
Well, we went for about a kilometer,
Until
but then
you
we
were out
thought, I said, Kenny was driving.
Yeah.
I said, Kenny, you know, we're going to break an axle. Then we're really going to be in trouble.
Yeah.
So we stopped to change that tire. And that night, they told us, they took us to a police compound that night.
Right.
And they said, the place you got to go through tomorrow is even worse. The next morning, we get up, slept in the truck in this police compound. And I woke up and I looked out the window and there were 3 deuce-and-a-half Army trucks with 50 cal machine guns mounted on them.
They were there to help.
Yeah, they said, you got an escort to the border.
Wow.
2 in front, 1 behind. Here I'm going, but I got a hole in the expansion tank and no spare tires. So that was nerve-wracking. I remember looking at that temperature gauge and it looked this big. Because I didn't know if a hole in the expansion tank would affect the coolant.
Right.
And there was no like lines that you could call some technician at General Motors. There was no communications. So then when we get to Ethiopia, we were the first allowed to cross by land since Haile Selassie went in there 10 years early, turned to communism.
Because of politics and...
Yeah, it was all communist. Right? It was the only communist foothold in Africa. The only reason the Ethiopians let us in was they wanted us to do a press conference in Addis Ababa and talk about what a great tourist destination Ethiopia was.
Being shot at.
So we come up with the side of the truck full of bullet holes. We put the truck, that side of the truck, up against a big brick wall so no one could get to that side.
Yeah.
And Ken and I, puppets, talked about bringing African unity and all that stuff, right?
When you decided to put this on, did you put the red line at the beginning or at the end?
That went at the beginning.
Okay.
We knew we had to go this way because this is the Atacama Desert here.
Right.
And you get in that just north of Santiago, Chile, come out of it in Ecuador. It's like driving from New York to San Francisco through a desert.
Right.
It's a long drive,
A long trek,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
But the key, one of our keys was here. This is not to scale, but this is the Darien Gap. There's no road from Colombia into Panama.
Okay.
And so we had to figure out how to get around that. So we were down here. We shipped the truck. We drove from Moncton to New York, air freighted it to Buenos Aires, and then drove it from Buenos Aires to Tierra del Fuego, which is like Halifax to Winnipeg.
Right.
So just getting to the start was a big deal, right? So then there was a ship over here in Rotterdam,
right around the
container ship, the Stella Likes. It was coming here to pick up containers and go through the canal. We were on a ship shore radio talking to the captain of that to say, when are you leaving? Give us 10 days advance. And we got there within 3 or 4 hours of our projection.
That's a pretty narrow window.
Yeah, yeah.
Then it takes the truck through the Panama Canal, you pick it up on the other side.
We picked it up. We went on the ship. The ship owner, they put it in us in his cabin.
Okay.
And tossed us a half gallon of gin and said, you guys are stuck on this thing for 5 days, right? But then we get out of here. That 5 days still counted, and then we took off north.
with that kind of a legacy in the automotive world, you're in the Maritime Automotive Sport Hall of Fame,
Yeah.
and they honored you for your achievements.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to wonder, you know, you mentioned your wife, who's been with you for 25 years.
Yeah.
That is a lot to take in. But she is a partner in this
She's
journey
a
as well?
partner.
Yeah.
She does. Like we produce product lines for automotive manufacturers. It's kind of our big gig, I guess.
Yeah.
And we do about 6 or 7 of those a year. And basically, Lisa runs that whole side of our business.
Right.
Yeah.
And her YouTube channel, and you know,
Yeah.
she's invested in showing the work that you're doing and celebrating that, and in a lot of ways encouraging people to, well, perhaps realize their dreams.
Yeah. We get into Djibouti. Our only contact there was a Roman Catholic bishop. He was from Quebec City. He was in charge of getting us across the Red Sea. He said, I spoke to the father last night. He won't do it for a couple of Protestants from New Brunswick. But he said, I found the best thing. He said, I have found a smuggler with a 40-foot wooden dhow who for 5,000 cash said he'd take it to Saudi Arabia. I looked at the bishop and I said, because we couldn't go on the boat. We had to fly over the plane. I said to the bishop, is he going to do it? He said, he charged you enough, he'll do it. He lives here, I know his family. If he charged you $500, I'd worry.
Yeah.
Gave him enough money. And my father-in-law, before we left, had given me a gold Krugerrand.
Okay.
He said, you never know when you might need gold to get you out of a jam.
Yeah.
So I took it out of my pocket and I showed this guy. To the bishop.
Yeah.
I said, tell him that's his tip. We flew into Jeddah, went down to Jazan, the container port where ship was coming in. So we go to Pier 23. And between 2 super tankers, it's this little 40-foot wooden sailboat. This guy with a grin from here to here, he was so happy that he did it. And we got a crane, we plucked it off the boat, and I reached it in my pocket and I handed him the ounce of gold. He took it and he put it back in my hand.
Really?
And he said, through the translator, he said, you might need it.
Wow.
And I learned a big lesson there. Which was kind of cool, because I formed an opinion of that guy based on what I first thought, not who he was.
Well, Garry, all I can say is you are full of stories, and I am so amazed at your attention to detail, your recollection. I know the books are going to be amazing for people to follow up on the story, but thank you for sharing some of your life with us and this machine.
For being interested.